Every day, over 24,000 professionals from 20 nations operating in 18 countries at 74 locations, spanning a little over 3,700 miles, deliver air power, develop relationships, and defend the region. In the past month alone, flying over 580 kinetic sorties, employing 4,800 weapons, flying 1,800 airlift sorties to move over 13,000 tons of cargo and nearly 18,000 passengers, and conducting 1,300 refueling sorties, delivering 68 million pounds of fuel to keep strike and ISR aircraft over our partners on the ground. Operation Inherent Resolve is a complex, dynamic environment for air operations, with multiple groups fighting in close proximity in the congested airspace over Syria. As we focus on destroying ISIS, I'm ever cognizant of the need to avoid an action that could result in a strategic miscalculation by any of the actors operating in this battle space. We saw such an incident unfold last week where pro-regime forces were seen advancing on a garrison at Antanf, at which we trained partner ground forces. These forces were given multiple opportunities to retreat before we struck them, including using our deconfliction line to get them to withdraw. Following repeated requests, coalition aircraft conducted a show of force and fired warning shots prior to executing the strike that destroyed a military threat consisting of a tank, armored vehicles, artillery, and technical vehicles. This strike should make it clear to all that coalition air power will be used when our ground forces are threatened.
And first, I think, as you know, we're precluded by law from coordinating with the Russians. Having said that, we have for many months now worked very hard to deconflict our operations. And I'm confident that we've made progress in that regard over the last couple of months. Spoke to my counterpart my Russian counterpart as recently as last night. We speak routinely when we need to work through the deconfliction. In addition to the direct communication that I have, we've opened up a 3-star level channel where our J5 here in the Joint Staff routinely communicates with his counterpart in Moscow, and then we have a pretty robust operational link on the ground from our Combined Air Operations Center in Qatar to the Russians on the ground. And we are looking for the Russians to work with the regime to deconflict our operations. The ground is becoming increasingly complex and constrained, but to date we have been able to deconflict operations. We have a proposal that we're working on with the Russians right now. I won't share the details, but my sense is that the Russians are as enthusiastic as we are to deconflict operations and ensure that we can continue to take the campaign to ISIS and ensure the safety of our personnel.
You talk about deconfliction. Well, it didn't work yesterday, the day before, when you called the Russians and said, get those militias to stop, and they did not. You had to strike them.
That's exactly right. And just to be clear, that was a force protection strike. Our commanders on the ground felt like they were threatened at that point, and their rules of engagement allow them to do that.
The coalition forces announced on June 6th that they had begun the long-awaited assault on the northeastern Syrian city of RAQQA. It was later that day when a group of pro-Syrian soldiers are reported to have approached a nearby coalition garrison, Antanf. The U.S.-Russia deconfliction line has, to date, failed to prevent 3 bold attacks on U.S. soldiers in southern Syria. This is a clash pitting the strategic objectives of the United States and its allies against those of the Russian-led coalition. And the war for territory has brought American troops and Iranian-backed forces into direct military confrontation. Both U.S. and Russian warplanes have been deployed, and shots have been fired from all sides. The battle brewing is directly related to the coalition training garrison, Antanf, located about 170 miles to the south of RAQQA, near a border crossing on a highway that cuts through hundreds of miles of flat desert. The U.S.-led Operation Inherent Resolve forces captured the Antanf garrison from a gang of the Wahhabi Jihadists more than a year ago, and it has been occupied ever since by NATO coalition allies used to train what they refer to as moderate extremists, the Syrian Democratic Forces.
It's on each quick already.
Supporting the Iraqis in the fight to liberate Mosul, though, remains our priority, and we have maintained an around-the-clock presence of aircraft to protect and support our partnered forces on the ground. These aircraft provide a myriad of missions, including close air support, situational awareness, command and control, refueling, and kinetic strikes. Complementing the coalition has been an increasing capable and lethal Iraqi Air Force that has made tremendous progress in its growth and development. This continuous presence of Iraqi and coalition aircraft continues to severely restrict ISIS freedom of movement and their fighting capacity. The offensive to recapture West Mosul is progressing well, with the vast majority of the city back in the hands of the Iraqi people. In support of this effort, the coalition employed over 6,000 weapons on targets including ISIS fighting positions, VBID factories, weapon cache, and boats. Our strategy going forward is not to allow the remaining ISIS force to escape to fight another day, but to annihilate them with precision. As you may know, we have two categories of targets and target development. That would be deliberate and dynamic. Deliberate targeting involves an extensive development process to ensure each one is legitimate and meets established strike criteria. This process can take from days to weeks to develop, depending on the target and the time needed to observe daily patterns of life and behavior. Dynamic targeting is much more responsive to emerging threats, taking anywhere from minutes to hours, depending on the type of target and environment. These are frequently discovered by ground forces or overhead aircraft. As with deliberate targets, we still carefully validate them and secure approval from the appropriate authority, as we do with deliberate strikes.
No problem.
We're down to 1-8, and we'll see you guys later.
See ya.
Doors close.
Roger.
Reset the KY, com 1.
Release. Weapon away in 2. One away, switch safe. Flash.
United Alpha Kilo 9 and surround, you can spec 9 in the four corners and working 220, just be aware that.
Release. Weapon away in 2.
Python 07 Kingpin, stand by, currently working your.
Switch is safe, 3 away. 10 seconds. Yeah, it's actually less than 35 seconds, I don't think about it. 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. Love it.
3, you're broken. Confirm, approved, elevator 260.
Blackout 3-3 Kingpin, affirm.
Coalition airstrikes and ground operations have struck approximately 2,600 ISIS-held gas and oil targets. Including over 1,500 tanker trucks. Our deliberate targeting process allows us to focus on high-impact targets while keeping a wary eye on any enemy capabilities that may reemerge. In the 10 months I've served as the CFAC, I've seen ISIS grow increasingly brutal against the people in the areas it controls. ISIS has become so desperate that they have baited us to strike targets that will purposely cause civilian casualties. Our eyes and ears in the sky and on the ground keep the coalition abreast of ISIS' increasingly desperate tactics. As we look to the east, we remain committed to the ongoing missions in Afghanistan. As part of Operation Resolute Support, we have coalition air advisors working side by side with the Afghans, from certifying aircraft maintainers to providing training on various aircrew duties. In the past, the Afghan army relied on the coalition for air support. Now they are increasingly relying on their own countrymen overhead. A great example of this is the A-29, which recently celebrated its first full year of combat ops at the hands of the Afghan Air Force. In concert with their MD-530 helicopters have become a game changer because now Afghan pilots can provide air attack capability across their country. Afghan forces have been doing this with just 12 A-29s in country, 4 of which just arrived in Afghanistan in April, and they're planning to acquire 12 more.
Would you be able to give us an update about your operations against IS Khorasan province? And also, we have seen a sharp increase in the use of air power in the last 2 months. Have you seen also any evidence that Daesh, ISIS fighters in Syria and Iraq have joined the Khorasan province in Afghanistan lately?
So first off, I agree with you. We have seen an increase in the number of strikes in Afghanistan, and I would attribute that first to the fact that we've gotten into the fighting season. And yes, ISIS-K has presented themselves as a target that we've been effectively targeting over the course of the last several months. As I kind of mentioned up front, we took out a couple of their leaders. 2/3 of their forces now been decimated, and 2/3 of the territory taken back. I think, as you've probably read about, this brutal entity has dragged out elders from their homes, beheaded people in front of their families, and hence we have put ourselves in a position to be able to aggressively target them, and we will continue to do that. At this point, we will continue to work closely with our Afghan partners on the ground to characterize and understand where they're at, and then as quickly as possible work with them and in coordination with the Afghan Air Force.